some studies that have been published locally. They've compared Denver to Colorado Springs, and they started by looking at the police departments, and they found that the police departments in both areas are solving crime at about the same rate, meaning that they're doing the diligent investigation, finding suspects, and then turning these cases over to the DA's office. What they were surprised to find, though, is that the big difference between crime and punishment and justice in Denver, why it's so different from what's happening down here, is the DA's office. Up there, they're filing about 30% of those solved cases that the police department's presenting to them.
Ouch.
Whereas down here, we're filing about 90% of those cases.
All right.
Meaning that, we're taking the work that the police departments are doing, and we're then affecting change by prosecuting a case. There's still some cases where, for one reason or another, the evidence just isn't there, and we can have respectful disagreements with our law enforcement partners, whether it's sheriff's office or police departments or what have you.
The very latest on economic development, workforce, and industry sector news in Southern Colorado. Here is Business Digest Weekly with our host, Dirk Hobbs.
All right, good Friday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Business Digest Weekly. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs. I want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate the opportunity to stream out of the KGFT and KZNT studios here at Salem Media. So thanks to our producer, Matt West. Amazing job, sir. Appreciate you. And hey, we got a whole new dynamic here. We're, as well as terrestrial radio, now we're streaming content as well. So you get to see who we're speaking with. And today we're talking to Michael Allen, who is our current district attorney for the 4th Judicial District here in Colorado. He is running for office again. You're a glutton for punishment, aren't you?
Love the job.
Great answer. Excellent. Michael Allen's across the board for me. We'll get to him in just a minute, but I do want to point your attention to a few things that are happening in the region. On October 17th, if you're into the medical space or med tech space, this probably is for you. And you're looking to potentially invest in a program that's happening here in the community, La Vida. It's a cancer research venue dedicated to enhancing and prolonging patients' lives. They're based here in the community. Now, this is actually a spin out of CTI, Chromatic Technologies. These are the guys that did the dye on the Coors Light can that turns blue. Well, that ink has some properties and capabilities when you match it with gold particulate matter and you match it with chemotherapy. It has the ability to transport the chemotherapy to only damaged cells.
Imagine that.
Very promising stuff, very early on, obviously. Lyle Small and company are over there doing something extraordinary. But on October 17th, 2024, from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., you can go to the Mary K. Chapman Room at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum. And it's in Colorado Springs. That's at 200 South Sierra Madre Street here in the Springs, 80903. There is a virtual option, but they certainly welcome you to come to that presentation in person and get to see the slides behind what they're doing. They've done some controlled studies on mice right now. It's absolutely mind-boggling how this all came together. But you never know, folks. We might be onto something. So chances are, if you're like any family in the United States, someone in your family, maybe yourself, have been impacted or touched by cancer. And, anytime somebody is out there fighting that battle, that's a brilliant, beautiful thing. So we encourage you to take a look at that. The invitation and RSVP are on our website and socodigest.com, but you can also get a link from us directly if you subscribe to the digest, socodigest.com/subscribe, and then we put that invitation in the mail to you as well. So hopefully you can make a point to get over there and see what's going on. Also, our next edition of the digest, if you haven't seen it before, this is it. We do paper, print. Obviously, digital is our largest distribution, web, television, and of course, radio and streaming here. So you can get a sense for what's happening in Southeast Colorado, our economy, our ecosystem here, our economic sectors and employers, what they're doing, job opportunities, and all things in between. So we're really glad you're here with us. And we're going to have a very informed and enlightening conversation with Michael Allen. Again, our current district attorney is running for re-election and is asking for your vote on November 5th. And certainly we endorse this particular candidate because we appreciate his posture on law and order as it relates to business prosperity. And I think that's part of the discussion we're going to have today. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Dirk. I always appreciate sitting down with you.
Likewise. I appreciate you taking the time because I know you're busy. You got a job and you're on the campaign trail right now. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've got a very supportive wife that is right there with me, hand in hand on this campaign trail and supporting everything that we're doing. And if it wasn't for her support, it'd be a lot tougher.
Indeed.
I can tell you that.
Yeah. Behind every great man is a greater woman, right?
Yeah. And sometimes she takes the lead too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, congratulations. Again, glutton for punishment or loving the job. Either way you look at it, we appreciate that you're there and the philosophy that your office is bringing to the table. So, again, orienting the listeners who might be tuning in for the first time, Michael, give us a little bit of background about you. I know you're a Navy guy, so October 5th is kind of a weird day for you.
Well, it's a great day for me. I hope it's not a great day for the Air Force.
There you go.
Saturday over at Falcon Stadium.
You never know. You guys are 3-0 going into this weekend.
Yeah.
And they're 1-2 going up to Laramie. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it'll be fun.
Yeah. It's kind of weird here in the news that all the conference turmoil with Air Force too. Hopefully they have a very stable landing spot because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, right?
Amen,
Navy,
brother.
Air Force, Army, all of us. So,
amen, brother.
Yeah.
Well, give us a little background about you. Let's get to know Michael Allen.
Yeah, I'm a Colorado native. Grew up in the Denver metro area, same as my wife. I graduated Arvada West High School, and then actually joined the Navy straight out of high school. Didn't grow up with a lot of financial resources, and so I thought, this is a good way to get some time to grow up, to experience some different things that I wouldn't have been able to experience otherwise. And so I did that for a period of 8 years.
Thank you
and
for your
then
service.
Came back and went to undergraduate school up in Greeley at the University of Northern Colorado, and then went off to Kansas for law school. And I actually went out there to do water law. I was thinking I'm going to do a focus on water law. Water's huge in the West, especially here in Colorado. The unforeseen thing, though, is that sometimes God's hand sort of taps you on the shoulder and says, you know what, I've got a different plan for you. And I think that's what happened here. It was in one of my first year law school classes. The local elected prosecutor came to the class and just talked about prosecution. And then at the end of the talk, he said, oh, by the way, we have internships if anybody's interested.
All right.
And a little light went off in my head, and I said, that might be a fun way to spend a summer.
Okay.
So applied for the internship, got it, and I've been in prosecution now for 20 years. So that providential sort of tap that I mentioned, I think happened in that class. The other part of me on the private side, I've been married for 29 years, almost 30 years this coming January. Got 2 great sons. My oldest is a teacher in Falcon and loves American history. And then my youngest is actually following a little bit in my footsteps. He's in the Navy right now and is currently deployed overseas, making sure that we can sleep soundly at night.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate him as well. Thank you for his service. Now, what makes a Denver boy think about the Navy? How does that work?
It's all the water around here, of course, Dirk.
Right. How could I miss it?
Yeah. It was kind of a confluence of things. I graduated high school in 91. Just a few years before that, Top Gun came out. I'm sure that played some sort of influence there.
Yeah.
But then, separately from that, there was a guy that I knew very well that joined the Navy, and he said, hey, you ought to go talk to the recruiter and see if he's got something for you. And so that's actually how it really happened is a friend influenced me and went down and talked to the recruiter, and the rest is history.
Right. So you took the job, fast forwarding in Kansas now after law school. You were going to water rights, right?
Yeah.
Which would have kept you in a very healthy, lucrative position.
Sure.
That would have been job security for sure, especially out here in the West.
Yeah.
But you got a taste of the prosecution arm.
Yeah.
And what attracted you to that, Michael?
Yeah, I've always been really good at thinking on my feet, being able to do that kind of work. And in that first summer, it was under Student Practice Act. I got to do trials, actually, as a law student. I think I did something like 40, 45 trials in that summer. There are bench trials in Kansas for low-level offenses. But it was the standing up for victims aspect of it that really, I think, is what set the hook for me. Standing up for people that either couldn't stand up for themselves because of whatever their circumstances were, or wouldn't stand up for themselves, maybe because they were in a domestic violence relationship, and there's a lot of coercion and control involved in domestic violence. And being able to stand up for them when they just couldn't do it because of those dynamics, I think, is really what got me hooked into it. And then seeing the difference that you can have on your community. When you're actually arguing on behalf of public safety in the community that you live in, that's a huge thing. It's something that I've not been able to get the same sort of influence over outside of the military anywhere else. This is a very unique job. Every time I go into the courtroom, I say that I'm here on behalf of the people of the state of Colorado.
Okay.
That includes everybody in the courtroom, judge, the defendant, the victim, jurors if they're in there. That's a very powerful thing. It means a lot to me to be able to stand up and represent the people of the state of Colorado. And as you said, I'm running for re-election. I would be humbled to do it again for another 4 years.
Well, you and your office have done an extraordinary job, and we're going to tie some of those loose ends together here in this conversation as it relates to business prosperity, economic development, and thriving and flourishing, as well as just the public safety message overall. We got a lot of distorted messaging out there around, victims' rights, who's right and who's wrong, who's really the victim, and the victims of the crime are the victim.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've gotten lost quite a bit in some of that hazy messaging, but we'll get to that. Your campaign email address, Michael Allen 4da.com.
That's the website. And then the email address is michael@michaelallen4da.com.
Very good. So folks can ask you a question and you're at the ready there.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's the work-life balance here or work campaign balance here? How are you holding up with that?
Yeah, actually we're doing pretty good. It's very busy this time of the year with campaigning and whatnot. It's quite a bit different than the first campaign because COVID hit. And so everything shut down and, courtrooms were shut. People were working from home. We weren't having campaign events like we did, like we're doing now. But besides that, it's just a busy time. There's the full-time job from, whenever I get to the office until I get done in the evening. And then from there off to campaign events. I've got something every night this week. So it's busy.
Yeah, you are a busy man. Well, it's Michael Allen, 4da.com. Folks, this is an important election because it does have not only ties to public safety, but it also has ties to business prosperity, attraction, and retention. And we're going to get into that when we come back with Michael. So stick around. We're back in a minute with the Business Digest Weekly. All right, we're back here, second quarter with Business Digest Weekly. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs. Thanks you for joining us. I want to give a quick shout out to my friends at Boot Barn Hall, J.W. Roth & Company at Venue for helping to underwrite the program. That's how we get to have informed and insightful conversations like with Michael Allen here, who is our current district attorney and is running for office again. November 5th is our big election day. I mean, you can't miss it, folks. You can't get away from it.
No.
November 5th is encroaching and on a national level, of course, here at the community level. So you want to affect change, start at the local level. And part of that is having a confidence in our law and order mechanism that they're going to do the right thing. And, employers across the region have boasted about this DA's office because there's a confidence that comes with knowing that there's going to be consequences associated with inappropriate conduct in the community. Outright crime or white-collar crime, whatever it happens to be. These folks are committed, and they have one of the highest prosecution rates in the state, if not broader than that. And I'll let you speak to that, Michael. But I do want you folks to kind of sit back and listen to the philosophical doctrines that we're going to try to separate here. Because there is something of a moray out there of ideology that suggests that somehow criminals are the victim. And I understand to some degree the empathy that is associated with somebody who finds themselves in a life of crime. However, that does not exclude them from the accountability that's associated with damaging another human being's life or their business or anything associated with something that isn't theirs. Self-harm's bad enough, but when you start harming others, that's when it gets pretty gnarly. And a powerful, strong, intelligent, and experienced DA's office is what we need. And fortunately for us here in El Paso and Teller Counties, that's exactly what we have. Michael, thanks for being here.
Thanks again, Dirk.
Appreciate you and Heidi letting us borrow you for a little bit of short time, and of course your office, because I know you got the workload and your campaign.
Yep.
So let's help the average listener here, and then some of the business owners and prospective employers that are looking at this region understand why a strong DA's office is contiguous with business prosperity and confidence.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately at the very core, it really comes down to the idea that experience actually matters in this job. This is not something that you can go pluck somebody off the street and say, hey, go run the DA's office and everything's going to be just hunky-dory. That's just not reality. Like I mentioned before, I've got 20 years of experience doing this job. So I've seen from a wide-ranging perspective what works and what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. If you look at some other cities across the country that have experimented with criminal justice reform, you'll see just some really bad effects of that decision. If you look at San Francisco, they've gone down that path.
Yeah.
They put somebody in charge of their DA's office that had no experience leading an office, and it led to all kinds of bad things. And even the people in San Francisco who are more inclined to think about criminal justice reform as a positive, even they said, hey, this is way too far, and they recalled their district attorney. Mm-hmm. You're seeing now some of the backtracking in Portland and Oregon with the drug laws. They've been just as radical as we have been in the state of Colorado on loosening up the drug laws. Portland now in Oregon, they're starting to now tighten back up again. They're saying, this model of treating criminal offenders as victims, as you mentioned, mm-hmm. just doesn't work. It doesn't lead to positive outcomes. And so now they're starting to ratchet back up again to, hey, we've got to start trying to hold people accountable in a better way. And that's the difference between, an activist DA and what we've got here in the 4th Judicial District. It's really important to let people know that we're a professional office. What that means is we're going to follow the facts of a case. We have to take the cases as they come. Mm-hmm. And then we apply the law to those cases without trying to prejudice one side or the other, trying to be an activist or trying to affect some sort of societal change. That's not what a prosecutor's office is designed to do. It's designed to work with police departments and sheriff's offices to investigate and then prosecute these cases, and then ultimately letting the citizens decide if somebody should be found guilty or not guilty. Mm-hmm. That's how jury trials work.
That's exactly
it's
right.
Citizens like you and your wife and your family that get plucked into a courtroom and mm-hmm. are asked to listen to sometimes horrific facts, right, mm-hmm. on some of these really heinous murder cases, and decide if the person that we've charged with that crime is actually guilty of the crime or not. That's the beauty of the American justice system, and I think we do it better down here than anywhere else in the state of Colorado, and I would actually say in almost all of the country.
I think a lot of people would agree.
Yeah.
Because it is, we do have criminal activity, just as any other city. We're not an anomaly in that regard. Right. But we do have a DA's office that's working hand in glove, appropriately so, with the Sheriff's Department and the El Paso County Sheriff's Department, as well as Colorado Springs Police Department and other law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Unpack that relationship and why that needs to be a dynamic that people need to understand. Yeah.
So first and foremost, I think you've got to have those relationships that are positive. Mm-hmm. If you've got, and just look around the country, if you've got a DA's office and a police department that are at odds and loggerheads, basically, mm-hmm. you're not going to have good service to the community. And that's what both police departments and DA's offices are ultimately responsible to do, and that's deliver service to their community. Mm-hmm. If you look at some studies that have been published locally, they've compared Denver to Colorado Springs, and they started by looking at the police departments, and they found that the police departments in both areas are solving crime at about the same rate, meaning that they're doing the diligent investigation, mm-hmm. finding suspects, and then turning these cases over to the DA's office. What they were surprised to find, though, is that the big difference between crime and punishment and justice in Denver, why it's so different from what's happening down here, is the DA's office. Up there, they're filing about 30% of those solved cases that the police department's presenting to them.
Ouch.
Whereas down here, we're filing about 90% of those cases.
All right.
Meaning that, we're taking the work that the police departments are doing, and we're then affecting change by prosecuting a case. There's still some cases where, for one reason or another, the evidence just isn't there, and we can have respectful disagreements with our law enforcement partners, whether it's sheriff's office or police departments or what have you. But as long as you've got that good, professional, trusting relationship that's built beforehand, you can have those disagreements and still move forward in an effective way. And we've been doing that like no other office in the state because of that.
Well, and the math just adds up.
Yeah.
When you're kicking 10% of the cases back to the curb for legitimate reasons versus 70% of the cases. I mean, that's got to be a morale issue on the cops that just, it's like, what are we doing out here?
Oh, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is, yeah.
So you and Roybal and other leaders are in lockstep in that sense. So how do you delineate the offices, though, so people don't think it's a club, if you will?
Yeah, it's definitely not a club. Everything that happens in the criminal justice system flows through our office. So that's why it's always important for me to note that the DA's office really is the chief law enforcement office in a particular area. So
Correct.
for our area, it's all of El Paso and all of Teller County. Anything that a police department does or a sheriff's office does on a criminal investigation has to come to us, and then we look at it and say, is there enough here to file or not? As you know, 90% of the time we're saying, yeah, let's go forward on this case. Mm-hmm. And then, there can be those disagreements sometimes. Sometimes we'll have to prosecute law enforcement officers if they behave badly. Mm-hmm. And we've done that on occasion too. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have that sort of check and balance. We're both part of the executive branch, but we're definitely not part of a club. Right. And we both work really well together though.
Well, and then you can look each other in the eye and say, you know what, the guy stepped out of line.
Yeah,
we got to hold he or she as accountable as the criminal.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So, and this is what people, they go off on these tangents and they start screaming at the cops or the DA's office because they feel like sometimes it's a fraternity. Mm-hmm. It's not. I mean, you guys are both professional agencies. You're trying to accomplish something, which is public safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, ultimately at the end of the day, what we do in the DA's office is we're looking to find justice. Justice is not one thing. It should be determined by the facts of a case and the law that, governs that particular action. And it can mean, in some cases, for a first-time low-level offender, we're putting them in diversion and getting them the tools to stay away from the criminal justice system going forward. That's a positive mark on public safety and justice.
Absolutely is, yeah.
And then if you've got somebody that's gone above and beyond to be a career criminal and they're violent and those types of things, well, justice says something else for those cases too. Mm-hmm. And that means typically that we're going to do our utmost to remove them from society for a period of time.
Yeah. How's the office feeling now? I mean, pretty confident?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're doing really good. Mm-hmm. Like everywhere, we're talking business here, obviously. COVID and the impacts that had on business certainly affected what we did in the DA's office too. The Great Resignation that we all heard about affected us. We lost quite a few people. We are actually in really good stead right now. We've got a full office. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. It feels really good. And we've, as a result, we've done things that have never been done before in this district.
Very good. Are you fully staffed?
We are.
Yeah. Very good to hear.
Yeah. So it feels great.
Is the attorney profession kind of meeting with the same dynamic as the medical profession? There's just fewer and fewer people interested?
Yes, absolutely.
That's problematic.
It's very problematic. If you look just nationally, the number of people graduating from law schools has declined over the last couple of years.
Is that right? Yeah.
So there's a shortage of attorneys. There's also this dynamic, and we see it here in Colorado, that some law schools don't do a good job of, hey, you know what? Prosecution is a good area to work in.
It's always,
you should explore that. It's usually the other direction, right? So we have to go all over the country to get attorneys recruited to the office. I actually was just looking at that yesterday. We've got attorneys that have graduated from law schools from 33 out of the 50 states, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool. Congratulations on filling the office and good retention pool. Yeah. Nobody's packing up yet, so that's good. But you got a big election out here, November 5th. If you want to learn more about Michael and his campaign, his philosophical doctrine, his background, that experience he talks about, Michael Allen, ALLEN, 4DA.com. And the Business Digest is a proud supporter of your campaign.
Thank you.
We believe in law and order as it relates especially to business and prosperity and public safety. So thank you for the work you guys are doing over there. We're going to get into more of that and how that translates into economic impact in the next section here. Michael Allen, 4DA.com. And we'll be back in a moment, folks, and we'll start to unpack what's next on this campaign trail, because we're coming down to the last few weeks. This is the boiler's on, right? Mm-hmm. You feel it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's getting warm.
Like you said, you've got an event. It's getting very warm.
Yeah.
You got an event every day.
Yeah.
Probably leading up to the campaign, I would imagine you have very few breaks. So what is your therapy in between? I mean,
it's
get away from it.
Yeah. Really just knowing that there's an end date, and then we'll relax after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate what you're doing out there, because being in politics in this day and age is not for the wimpy.
Yeah,
that's for sure, because they take a lot of swipes at you. But Michael Allen, the number 4da.com, and also the Digest is a proud sponsor of 2C. So if you're in El Paso County, we definitely want you to vote for yes on 2C. We're generally not a political program, but when it comes to business prosperity, we definitely want to point out the things that are working and keep that going. But 2C is the road bill or ballot issue that's coming out. Now, we've gotten about a third of the way to repaving and re-engineering our roadways here in El Paso County. We've got a long way to go. 2C, it'll help all of us. And it's not a new taxation. It's what we've already been doing for the last several years. All right, back in a moment with Michael Allen. Dirk Hobbs here, third quarter Business Digest Weekly. Now, if you can see me, you know I'm not drinking a toddy.
Looks like a LaCroix to me.
It did. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But when we were just on terrestrial, it played probably a little better than it does here on streaming. But nonetheless, we're back with Michael Allen, District Attorney here in Southern Colorado, 4th Judicial District. That's a tongue twister for me.
It is.
But you're running for re-election November 5th. It's a big day. It's a big day for all of us. We can't wait to get it behind us. Isn't that weird? I mean, it's a great celebration of American democracy and a great symbolism for our republic. But it is painful, Michael, as a consumer as well as a candidate, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, are we all getting tired of these campaign ads on TV yet?
Yuck. It's gross. And, of course, our national election, it's just really hard to watch because there's so much vitriol out there.
There is.
That's why you should listen to the Business Digest Weekly and read this great publication, because we tend to focus on what's working in Southeast Colorado, our ecosystem here, our economic sectors and employers that are doing a great job. In fact, Colorado's got a good story to tell economically. And over last year, the new reports came out. The state's labor market showed resiliency, with an average of 222,000 jobs per month and a total of 1.3 million jobs added from January to June. So we're on a pretty decent trajectory. A lot of that's happening down here. Not all of it, but a lot of it's happening down here. And I think a lot of that is some of the confidence employers have in their district attorney's office. That's just part of the equation. Obviously, there's site selections, incentives, there's all kinds of economic development message behind that. But knowing that our infrastructure is being attended to by a competent executive, Travis Dio over at CSU, and then our DA's office is looking at crime and consequence the way your office does, also says, you know what, if we do get sideways with somebody, we know somebody's going to take action.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that I think is really cool about what we launched when I first took office, 4 years ago now, is I was really interested in, we've got a ton of data in this office, in the DA's office, from all of our cases, but it hadn't really been harnessed. And so similar to the military, I wanted to start an intelligence-led prosecution effort, which is really digging into that data, seeing what the crime trends are, where we are doing good work and where we can add extra resources to do better work. And so we launched that program, and we're really using that in an effective way, both between my office and then what's happening with CSPD and the sheriff's office and whatnot, really tackling those crime trends. We're seeing a lot of, obviously, motor vehicle theft just shooting through the roof. We're seeing juvenile violent crime shooting through the roof. And so now we're able to more quickly and more agilely, if that's a word.
It is today.
Putting resources towards those areas of need, and then hopefully having effective change in that area. So we're actually ramping up on our juvenile effort here to go after some of this violent juvenile crime that we're seeing, smash and grabs that are targeting businesses in the community.
Right.
Motor vehicle theft that, just off the charts.
Yeah.
The other part of that is the connection between drugs and crime. There's an undeniable connection between drugs and crime. If you look at when Amendment 64 was passed back in 2012, that legalized marijuana in Colorado, and then looking at violent crime rate in the state of Colorado, every time we've loosened up the drug laws, our violent crime rate just keeps creeping up, and it was below the national average before that passage. Now we're above the national average in violent crime.
To argue that.
Yeah.
And yet they try.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what are some of the attribution factors for youth offenders? I mean, Is it the drug component?
Well, it's partly that. We know that, there's studies out there that say that youth using, let's say, marijuana is down. But those numbers are skewed. Most kids that they're polling are not going to necessarily tell the truth on that. The evidence suggests
Probably not, yeah.
that youth are using drugs, especially marijuana and maybe some other heavier drugs, is at an all-time high in Colorado. And I have to believe that that's a big part of this sort of a permissive drug culture that has been created in the state of Colorado, right? Mm-hmm. When we have Amendment 64 that passes in 2012, and then we have, misdemeanor rewrite happening in 2019 where they say if you possess 4 grams or less of methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, then that's just a misdemeanor. That's how you create a permissive drug culture in the state. Yep. And it should be no surprise to anybody that when we start saying, hey, these things are okay, these things that are bad for you are okay, is it a surprise that kids might start using those things at a higher rate? It shouldn't be, right?
And it's those illicit drugs that are really kind of at the premise. I mean, the gateways, alcohol and tobacco and marijuana, but then you get into the more illicit substances and they're out-of-body experiences a lot of the times. Yeah. But that does not release that individual from accountability.
No, it absolutely does not. The potency of marijuana before Amendment 64 passed, 6% roughly, THC, and now we're above 90%.
Oh.
And the mental impact that has on a developing brain,
That's a different chemical.
We know that kids, their brains don't develop fully until they're 25 years old, right? They can still be volitional and have intent and all those sorts of things even before their brain is fully developed.
Right.
But you add in that high potency marijuana and it's leading to mental health issues, all kinds of different mental health issues that are really affecting our kids. It's leading to really bad, dangerous decision making. It's leading to, a violent crime surge where I've never seen before so many shootings happening at the hands of kids in a community like what we're seeing now down here in the 4th Judicial District, but really across the whole state. And a lot of that is because of some really bad laws that are being passed in Denver by a very criminal justice reform-minded legislature and a governor that's willing to sign these bills into law.
Mm-hmm. Very problematic.
Yeah.
And it does separate the perception of Colorado into two very succinct camps.
It does.
Right. We've got a hyper-liberal state capital area, at least in the legislative arm of things, and then a more conservative, more thoughtful approach, I think, anyway, down here. Mm-hmm. Is that tough to compete against? Do you feel the encroachment of the Denver mindset or the more... what did you call it? Criminal justice reform mindset creeping in?
Yeah.
You get that pressure?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I was talking with John Suthers recently. He was former elected DA down here in the 4th Judicial District. He was the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney. He's got a long list of experience in this realm. And he was saying back when he was DA, back in the late 80s, the difference between then and now is remarkable. Back then, if he would go to the state capitol to testify on a bill, the legislature was encouraged to hear from him and would take his advice on, hey, this is either a good bill or a bad bill on public safety. When I go up now and the other DAs in the state go up to the legislature to testify either for or against a bill, we're the last people they want to hear about. And we're the very people that are tasked with upholding public safety.
Wow.
They would rather hear from people from the ACLU or the Public Defender's Office. That to me is an upside down world.
It is.
We've changed our priorities as a state when we're enacting laws based on what the ACLU and the Public Defender's Office say that are very focused on just a very slim piece of it. Whereas myself and police chiefs and sheriffs, we're all focused on and tasked with upholding public safety. Mm-hmm. We are the ones that are keeping a pulse on that, right? And when they don't listen to you, that makes it troubling.
It does. And I would go so far as to say, you may not say it, but certainly from an outsider's perspective, if as an employer, I'm more confident in that mindset being in your office than I am a reform mentality because I can fully appreciate, and I think on the surface, anybody can appreciate the thought process of trying to reform criminals.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, get them away from the criminal justice system, right? Yeah. I get that. But at the expense of the prosperity of business and public safety and be able to walk down the street in Colorado Springs at 7:00 at night, I mean, that should not be a judgment call.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
It should not be.
It should be a pleasure to say, we're going to go hold hands and walk our kids down the street and show them the different statues and monuments and what life is like at night out in your Colorado Springs area. So so you're getting some pushback. You're getting some pressure, not you personally or your office, from those ideologists, but you're feeling that encroaching here, and you guys are really the barbarians at the gate. I mean, you're fending that off.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Yeah, I kind of think of Palmer Ridge, right, as that sort of that line.
Feels like
storming the gates kind of thing.
Yeah.
The things that have happened across the country that I mentioned earlier, in Oregon and in San Francisco and Philadelphia and Chicago, a lot of that is because you've got criminal justice minded DAs that have been elected to sit in those spots, and they enact change by refusing to prosecute certain crimes, right? Which, by the way, is violation of their oath. They take an oath to uphold the laws of whatever they're prosecuting. What's happened in Colorado is almost the same thing, but in a different way. When you've got a legislature that is so criminal justice reform minded, they're forcing DAs to have to adapt to a different, landscape basically in criminal justice, and some are struggling with that. We are refusing to budge on things though. Violent offenders, we're prosecuting them to the same degree that we were before. Some of this stuff has changed. We lead the state in the number of trials that we take by a long margin, I should mention. We prosecute to a higher degree career and violent offenders than any other DA's office in the state. Fentanyl has been flooding our area just like every other part of the state.
Yeah.
It's not even close, but we lead the state in our prosecution of fentanyl dealers.
Okay.
People that are killing people. And I really call fentanyl dealers death dealers.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, you may not say it or take credit for it, and I appreciate that humility, but as a business owner, I will say a strong DA's office is definitely part and parcel of some of our economic prosperity down here in Southern Colorado. Now, that's in bed with a lot of other things. The Spacecom landing here, a strong EDC and chamber, the other chambers in the region from Tri-Lakes all the way down to the Hispanic Chamber and the Black Chamber. And there's just a lot of great work out here. And our economic sectors are bubbling over. But they also know that they are looking at the infrastructure equation. They're saying, okay, this is a utilities and city group that is conscientious of the roads and getting around and our transportation hub, but they're also conscientious of our law and order and building that confidence with employers. So I'm going to cut Michael loose in the fourth quarter here to talk a little bit more about his philosophy and why he thinks you should vote for him on November 5th. Back in a moment. All right, we're in the fourth quarter, Business Digest Weekly on this September, what is it, the 20-something?
28th? 27th.
27th, okay. Yeah. Well, we got Air Force up in Laramie this weekend, but they're coming back October 5th. They're going to play the Navy. And the gentleman across the board from me.
Anchors away.
Anchors, there it is, folks. Anchors away. Okay, well, I have to be a little impartial because I really can't pick one service academy over the other. I didn't go to either, but I root for them all. But I want to shout out to a couple of folks out there who support us. Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group is another great supporter of ours. CSOG.net. Great orthopedic surgeons. If you get bumped and bruised, go over and see the folks at CSOG. I actually know a lot of those providers, those physicians, those therapists. They're amazing. Great people, loving care, good stuff. So also in the community on October 16th, the Breakfast of Champions will be in town. And we have a tremendous speaker, Janet Evans. She's an Olympian, four-time Olympian, I believe. And she'll be here to talk about her health journey. And it's interesting because most of the guests and speakers at the Breakfast of Champions, they do have a health journey that's remarkable, and they've needed that public health infrastructure. And that's why Peak Vista Community Health Centers is so important to this community. There's a financial component to that because they're helping people establish primary care in a setting with professional physicians, instead of burdening the emergency departments, which are exponentially higher cost. But when you don't have a care provider and you're sick, chances are you're going to find yourself driving to the ED. Rather, you can drive to Peak Vista and establish care for the long term there. Also, they're going to be celebrating Mr. Bill Hibble, who's the champion of health. This is an incredible individual. We had the pleasure and privilege of putting him on the cover of our North magazine, which is our business-to-consumer kind of community profile magazine. And what just a gentleman, a humble man, and somebody who also understands the value of community health. And he's put his shoulder into that for pretty much the bulk of his career. But he was two-time CEO of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and just a tremendous citizen here in the community. So we look forward to celebrating Bill, listening to Janet, and also raising some capital investment funds for Peak Vista so they can continue their mission in keeping our healthcare costs lower here in El Paso County. Also in November, opening up the Hotel Polaris. That construction project at Northgate is finally coming online. I had Kevin Barroso in here a few weeks ago. He was talking about all the assets and attributions of this great facility. It's long overdue. Part of the City for Champions movement that happened quite a few years ago under Southers and a number of other contributors here in the community. But that is coming to fruition here in November. Very, very exciting times. Well, let's get back to the business at hand here. We have Michael Allen, our current district attorney for the 4th Judicial District. I did it.
You did it.
Without fumbling.
Yeah.
He is running for his office, for his job again, November 5th. And we at the Business Digest are proud sponsors of his campaign and endorse him fully, as well as the other item on the ballot, which is 2C. This is the infrastructure bill that will continue to have our roads in good shape. So when people visit here, they get a great first impression in your Uber or limo drivers not dodging crater-sized holes in the road. So it's a big deal. And frankly, we haven't really felt it over the last 10 years, and it's the same thing, folks. So yes on 2C. We're big fans of that as well. Michael Allen, ALLEN, the number 4DA.com. Michael, welcome for the last quarter here.
Thanks, Dirk.
Appreciate you being here. All right, man, I'm going to give you a little airway here to really kind of unpack some of the things you want people to understand about your office and the job you hope to continue to have.
Yeah. Well, actually, as you were talking in this lead up, you mentioned Bill Hibble. You know, here's some trivia about Bill. He actually worked in the DA's office years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
I do remember
So
that.
he is just a community treasure.
He is.
Just one of the nicest guys, as you mentioned, so dedicated to our community and has done lots of great things. And people in the DA's office, we like to say that he got to start with us. So. But he's just a treasure.
Indeed.
You know, a lot of people don't really know necessarily, and this is a good thing. It means they haven't had to encounter us in the courtroom, but they don't necessarily know what we do in the DA's office. Mm-hmm. We are the busiest DA's office in the state of Colorado. We typically file over 20,000 cases per year. We just set a new record for the state for jury trials in a year, 475 trials in 1 year, which is remarkable.
Yep.
People don't have a good appreciation for what that means, but that typically means at least one attorney, support staff, an investigator, and then a police department or sheriff's office that investigated that case. And it can either be a day-long jury trial or it could be 2 or 3 week-long jury trial. And I've done both kinds of those things. Mm-hmm. So we're very, very busy. We lead the state again in our prosecution of violent and career offenders. And really what it comes down to is that we know that evil never rests, right? Evil is always lurking in the shadows, doing bad things. Yeah. And there are people out there that are doing evil things in our community, whether it's committing murders or attempted murders or sex assault or what have you, preying on children. We've got all those things happening here in the 4th Judicial District. And we are not afraid to stand up to evil in the courtroom and hold them accountable. That's ultimately what this job is about.
And then there's crimes of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the smash and grabs that have been happening, those are truly crimes of opportunity. Typically, these are going to be juveniles, actually. Some of these kids are even as young as 11, 12 years old that are stealing cars, ramming them into businesses, and then engaging in stealing things from inside the businesses, whether it be at a vape shop, which we've had a fair number of those. Mm-hmm. We've had gun stores that have been smashed and grabbed, and firearms have been stolen. And those guns are not going out to bake sales, right? They're going out to commit other violent acts in the community.
That's right.
So these are things that we're taking a very hard stance on. In fact, about a month or so ago, I put out a press release saying that we're taking zero tolerance policy on these cases, meaning that we're seeking max sentences. So when these offenders are caught, we're taking them as hard as we would a murder case.
Very good, Michael.
Yeah.
And you're like you said earlier in the program, and I want to reiterate this for those joining us a little late. Denver is prosecuting about 30% of the cases that end up on their doorstep at the DA's office up there. We're prosecuting 90.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous workload.
It is.
But it's also reassuring to the community at large, John Q. citizen as well as John Q. business owner, to know that if something happens to them, right, God forbid, that there's going to be some consequence.
Absolutely.
And in El Paso and Teller County are not the places you really want to try your luck at it.
Absolutely, yeah. The thing that I'm really blessed to be able to do with this job is I've got a great office that I'm lucky to be the leader of. I've got 92 attorney positions in the office. I tell people all the time we're the biggest law firm south of Denver because it is truly the biggest collection of attorneys in one space.
Indeed.
Anywhere south of the Denver metro area. And they're all dedicated towards the same thing, and that is standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves, prosecuting bad guys, putting people in jail when they need to go to jail or prison, and then diverting people that need that second chance. Both of those things are good, positive outcomes in the justice spectrum, and both can be used to enhance public safety. If you're steering somebody away and giving them the tools to avoid committing acts in the future, criminal acts, that's a great thing for the community. And then there's some people that are just bad people.
Yeah.
They make bad decisions. They are preying evilly on people. We do a really good job of removing them from society when we need to.
Also a real word, by the way, evilly.
Yeah. We're inventing all kinds of new words
hey,
here.
That's great, But the rehabilitation side of life, you're not a merciless office either.
No, absolutely not.
You see opportunities for people to rehabilitate.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, what we do in prosecution and in policing for our police agencies out there, we're dealing with the human condition, right? So that means we're taking people as we find them.
Very good.
If somebody's got an addiction and that's leading them to commit offenses, hopefully not violent offenses, then maybe we can give them the tools to tackle their addiction issues and get clean and sober and start to be productive again. We've got a really robust veterans trauma court program, tons of veterans in this community, obviously,
You
right?
bet.
5 military bases, and then all the veterans that choose to retire here.
Now, these guys have seen hell.
They've seen it. Yeah. They've fought it, right?
Yeah.
They've stood face to face with it and faced it down. When they get sideways with the law, as long as it's not something that's a really violent offense, then we're willing to give them a second chance. These are people, men and women, who have raised the right hand and swore to protect the Constitution up to and including their life. And it's no skin off our backs if we can give them the tools that they need to overcome PTSD or a TBI or what have you, right? An addiction that resulted from medication that was prescribed to them because of an injury, whatever it might be. Give them the tools to get back on the straight and narrow, and it's been really successful.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
Congratulations. All right, about a minute and 10 seconds on your best campaign pitch, brother.
Yeah, well, I'm humbled to have the support of you, Dirk, and your program. I really want to just continue doing this job. It's part of my DNA now. I've been in public service from the time I graduated high school and I joined the Navy till this 20-year career in prosecution. I want to continue that at the behest of our community. My wife and I raised our kids here. This is what we call home, and we care deeply about it, and I want to continue to serve.
Well, thank you for doing so. Yeah. Thank you to Heidi and team at the Allen camp for making this contribution to our community. It is truly an edifying contribution. Michael Allen, the number 4da.com. And folks, we want to make sure that you research the candidates, look at their platforms, look at the messaging, try to relate that to the context of your world. And, we have a wonderful lifestyle down here in Southern Colorado, and it's made possible in part by a strong law enforcement apparatus, and that includes the sheriff's office, the police department, the municipal police department, our city government, as well as our district attorney's office. And we thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
So Michael Allen, Allen, the number 4da.com. And if you want to message Michael, he's amenable to that. Michael at michaelallen4da.com. Good luck to you guys. Hang in there.
Thank you.
November 5th's almost here.
Almost here. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, folks. Have a wonderful weekend. And dare I say, go Air Force. Sink me.
You've been tuned in to Business Digest Weekly with Dirk Hobbs. If you'd like to be considered for a spot on our show, email us at info@coloradomediagroup.com.